Last time we said, hey, we want some adversity. Well, I think it's here.
They're struggling a little bit right now, and I think ultimately the kids don't realize it, but like that struggle is a good thing, and that struggle is ultimately what makes you who you are.
Some big innings for the opposing team seems to be more or less our kryptonite.
When we hold teams down long enough, we typically get that explosive inning. The more and more that we can hold the team down, the more and more we can kind of put the pressure on them, the more and more confidence we're going to see, in our swings and in those situations. And, we're going to ultimately manufacture and execute runs that way.
By the way, we're 14-1 when we score 10 plus runs. That's not really a surprising stat, but the impressive part is we've done it 15 times this year. We scored 10 plus runs. We jinxed them. We jinxed them into a pretty rough week and a half. We'll say that. So last we talked, we had just taken the series from Indiana and Northwestern. We're following it up here on a week where we went 3-6. So last time we said, hey, we want some adversity. Well, I think it's here. We didn't think it was coming.
Yeah, definitely. They definitely are feeling a little bit, they're struggling a little bit right now. And, I think ultimately the kids don't realize it, but like that struggle is a good thing, and that struggle is, ultimately what makes you who you are. You know what I mean? Like that struggle, that turns into grit, and that grit is toughness. And to be, a successful baseball player and have a successful baseball team, well, like, you better be damn tough on the baseball field. And ultimately, sometimes, when you get kicked in the ass, like, you get that chip on your shoulder, and, hopefully it makes them just dial back in and, ultimately dive into where they're struggling so they could pick this back up and put it back on the right page.
Yeah, and just knowing Bino and his leadership, that they're going to respond well to it. And frankly, we knew this was going to happen. Like, we weren't going to keep scoring 10 plus runs every single game. We've done it 15 times this year out of 27 games, which is pretty darn good. But no offense in the country keeps that up consistently. It's kind of like up and down throughout the year, and ultimately you just want to be hitting your peak at the right time. We're getting in, 3 series into Big Ten play now. We are 6-6, right in the middle of the pack. So, this is the best time of year for that to happen. And we certainly have the guys to keep playing well and continue getting better throughout the year. So let's go back, though,
and dude, like, there are a lot of bright spots, in even the 3-6 in the last 9 where, we're still swinging the bat. Like, we're still having some explosive innings. We're still staying dynamic in the box, and, leading all this off with, a win at home on Dollar Dog Night with St. Bonaventures. We pretty much had a bullpen day, and, we beat St. Bonaventures at home. We had 16 punchies and, 6 walks. So, that's telling me, too, that, like, we have some stuff, and the arms just need to execute a little bit better on a consistent basis.
Yeah. And winning on midweek games is not easy. Like, you look at, a lot of times on the weekends you're playing other Big Ten teams, and then the midweeks you're playing, whoever you're playing. And a lot of times you'll look at the schedule and be like, it's an easy win. Like, what you got to understand for some of these programs coming to Penn State in a midweek, like, that is the game they've had circled on their schedule the whole year, and for whatever reason, it's always freezing cold. Midweek games. There's not many people in the stands. That goes for any school in the country, and it's like it's kind of hard sometimes to get the energy up. Now the best teams do it more often than not, come out to play. But we certainly did against St. Bonnie. But the next night,
and dude, Tuesday night, 7,506 hot dogs.
That's a lot of dogs.
That's a lot of hot dogs, bro. Like there were people in the stands on Tuesday night.
I take back what I said. I misspoke saying there aren't many people there. That's typical for most schools, but not Penn State anymore, apparently. Especially when they're giving out dogs for $1. So that is pretty awesome. That makes it a lot more fun to go out there and play on a Tuesday night. But then we play Lafayette and we drop a tough one, 5-3. To Lafayette. We had 3 errors in that game. Certainly need to clean that up. Like at this level, doesn't matter who you're playing. If you make 3 errors, it's going to be tough to win ball games. It's just free bags that you're giving other teams, and they're going to capitalize on that. So tough loss.
Yeah, no, dude, and just simple baseball. Doing the small things right there where. We didn't play the best baseball against Lafayette, and realistically, like that's the only way that Lafayette beats us.
Yeah, we give them free bases. That's it, and obviously the offense cooled off a little bit there, putting up 3 runs, and that did seem to continue a little bit. But again, you can expect the offense to cool off, at different parts of the year, because then we roll into a weekend against Michigan State, pretty big series. Now, I think last time we talked about, want to see how our offense does against a true stud arm.
Ace.
And we got it, Friday night in Michigan State, against Michigan State. I don't even know how to pronounce his last name, Zierwa, Dzierwa. He's their Friday guy. Dude's a stud. He's a 1.27 ERA.
54 punches and 13 walks on the year.
So he pounds the zone. He comes at you. Obviously, his stuff is really good. I wasn't in the box against him, so I can't give you details of why his stuff is so good, but it is. The numbers show it. Everybody's talking about this is going to be a tough outing, and it certainly was. One of the best offenses in the Big Ten versus one of the best arms.
And we battled them too. We had 5 punch outs in 5 innings.
Yeah.
So, against a guy, a Friday night dude, 5 punch outs in 5 innings, he by no means did he dominate us, but he definitely had us off balance.
Right, and they made the plays, and sometimes you do got to tip the cap. We dropped that one 4-0, and we had 3 hits. Like you said, we were putting the ball in play. They were just making the plays, and I think a lot of that comes down to just how solid contact we're making. But good pitching is always going to be good hitting, always. And it's about capitalizing on their mistakes in these Friday night games when you're facing a really good arm. And they just didn't make many mistakes. And tip your cap. Good game. You guys played well. Go out the next day, and we responded really well the next game.
Yeah, no, we picked it up. We did definitely pick it up that next game.
So
got the game to win.
Right. Saturday we come out after getting shut out on 3 hits on Friday night, and we put up another 10-plus run game, win 11-5. Scored 11 runs on 8 hits. I like comparing those numbers a lot because that kind of, to me, is how efficient is our offense being at scoring runs. When you can score more runs than hits, it means that you're moving guys around and getting timely hits. So 11 runs on 8 hits. Jesse Jakonski, thank you. 2 bombs, 1 being a grand slam, 6 RBIs. Decent.
Yeah, no, and
solid game.
He's one of the bright spots, in this little skid where he's electric. Right now, he's locked in the box. Even he had a pretty solid weekend there, and on Saturday, that bomb helped us out big time.
Yeah, for sure. And you see, even when we're not putting up a ton of runs, there's a couple guys having really good games, really hitting the ball hard. And
yeah, no, ultimately that's a 5-5 grand slam in the sixth that ultimately wins us that game.
Right. Gives us a little spark to come out, even the series, and heading into Sunday, and then Sunday, that's what you want when you drop Friday night. It's going to happen sometimes. Got to go out and bring the energy and win on Saturday, and then it's anybody's ball game on Sunday. You're just trying to give yourself a chance to win the series. Unfortunately, this series we did not. We lost.
Dropped our first Big Ten series of the year.
Yep. And Michigan State's a good club. They have played a pretty tough schedule so far, but
I think they're in the Big Ten. They're fourth in ERA.
Yeah, they have a really good.
So ultimately they're a good pitching staff, and I believe it was pretty cold that weekend, and ultimately our barrels, they still produce. They scored 10 runs on Saturday, but ultimately, our pitching, we gave up some big innings. We're not necessarily getting shutdown innings when they matter. And, we need to ultimately keep that momentum a little bit more, on the mound so we can swing that into our hitters, get into going a little bit more.
Yeah, and some big innings for the opposing team seems to be more or less our kryptonite. Like we're giving up some big innings, and having a shutdown inning is so important after coming out, scoring runs, and whether it be top or bottom doesn't matter. But then that next inning, just come out and putting up a zero. That's tough to do, but a big focal point for pitching staffs, and we can improve there for sure. We can definitely improve there. On that Sunday game at Michigan State. Against Michigan State, we were home. Paxton Kling went 3 for 4, had a really good game. We had 12 hits, so we're talking about that efficiency. We had 4 more hits on Sunday than we did Saturday, but Saturday we scored 11 runs, and Sunday we scored 5. So timely hitting. Getting guys into scoring position, capitalizing on mistakes, those things all play a role, and we just didn't get them across the plate. But when you give up 10 runs, the record's not going to be great when you give up 10 runs.
And Michigan State, kind of repeating what we were saying earlier, but Michigan State pitching staff is pretty good. And just looking over their overall numbers, like K to walk ratio, ERAs even, like they rank high up there in the Big Ten. And, ultimately we did have a lot of competitive at-bats this weekend. We had multiple two-hit games out of Jakonski. Paxton Kling had a 3-hit day on Sunday. So, our offense is still there. We just didn't really have the shutdown innings when necessary, dude. Like we had some big innings that just kept, kind of snowballing, and we need to make one pitch. It always got to be that next pitch mentality. Whether it was a strike, ball, foul ball, home run, double, like it doesn't matter. It's getting back to be where my feet are, and then ultimately make my best pitch with my God-given ability. And I think as young pitchers, I think as these kids continue to develop and to continue to get seasoned, really, they're gonna learn how to control the mental game a little bit more, slow it down a little bit more, and hopefully be able to execute in some of these situations as the season goes on. Because that's going to be really important in our success as a team, as a program. Because right now, I personally still love where our hitters are at, and I think ultimately our pitching staff, it's time for them to step up a little bit and, to start producing a little bit more. Because, when we hold teams down long enough, we typically get that explosive inning.
Yeah.
So ultimately, the more and more that we can hold the team down, the more and more we can kind of put the pressure on them, the more and more confidence we're going to see, in our swings in those situations. And, we're going to ultimately manufacture and execute runs that way.
Yeah, one of my coaches once told me that if you could redo 5 pitches in any game, you would win 99% of games. And ever since that was my freshman year of college, ever since he said that, I've always thought about it. It's 100% true. There's 5 pitches throughout a game, 160 pitches in the game. You don't know which 5 they're going to be. So you have to be locked in for every single pitch of the entire game, because there's going to be 5 that will determine the outcome of the game. And throughout this week, we just lost those 5 pitches. That's what.
Yeah, no, and I'm confident in ultimately the culture and the traits and the characteristics that are being instilled in our players through our coaching staff, and ultimately their support system, where I believe they will learn from this. They'll analyze it, they'll get better from it, and we'll get back to seeing those results on the field.
Yeah, the margin for error in this league is razor thin. You're a little bit off on the mound, you're a little bit off in the batter's box, and you lose a few more pitches than you win, and you lose ball games. That's the tough part about playing at this level, is you have to be ultra locked in and focused for every single pitch. And there will be games, and I think we've seen a couple of them where we're not clicking on all cylinders like that. But as long as you take that as a learning experience, then we have the talent. It's not like a talent issue at all.
Dude. And look at the major leagues. Like, the best team in the major leagues wins 60% of their games. The worst team in the major leagues wins 40%.
Yeah.
Like, the talent gap really is that small.
Yeah.
Where, culture and ultimately just that process of growth as a team and, as people on that team, it's the most important thing, because as soon as you catch that momentum and you can start running with it, that's that little bit of that's that little bit of fresh air that gets you going, gets you off, gets you hot, and they're the things that you're working to do all year.
Yeah. So moving on from Michigan State, there we played Pitt midweek, lost. I don't even want to talk about.
I hate losing to Pitt, dude.
Losing to Pitt. I don't know why.
Ew.
I can't stand it. Paxton Kling did hit a leadoff home run. That was awesome.
Yeah, no.
But
we were on the board early.
We gave a big inning in the 7th. 2-2 ball game during the 7th. And ended up losing 9-2. So we'll just leave it. Pitt got lucky on one. I think we probably got them later in the year. So I'd love to bring some energy and put it to them.
Yeah, no.
So forget about that.
Seventh inning, dude. They just big 5 spot, and that's kind of like the little trend is like, I'm looking at a lot of these games, and there's some games that we're throwing up 6 or 7 zeros, and then there's a 4 or a 5 spot,
right?
And that 4 or that 5 spot, it could be a little bit deflating, and ultimately I think. One of our better relievers, he came in that inning, and he might have been a little bit too much on the plate, where he gave up a few barrels and stuff like that. But same thing with him. He's one of our trusted relievers. He's an older guy too, and we've seen a ton of success and a ton of potential in him. So kind of got to watch that midweek.
And then and that speaks to how small the margin for error is. Yeah, I think people can look at the box score and say 0, 0, 0, 0, 5. That's just one inning of lost focus, couldn't find the plate, left it over too much over the heart of the plate. Just one inning, a little bit lack of focus. I'm not saying that's necessarily the cause. May or may not have been, but it happens like that. And good baseball players.
Oh yeah, and dude, they're getting to a point in the season where, like, you know, they're not at the halfway point yet, but they're closing in on it, and you know, a little bit of that mid-season fatigue and stuff starts to set in, and it's gonna start warming up. Like, dude, it was 75 yesterday. I was ready to get out on the course, but it's gonna start heating up. The barrels are gonna heat up. The arms are gonna heat up with it, and you know, this team will get going.
Yeah, I remember getting to this point every season. Your body, you start to feel a little fatigue. You might be hurting in some places, and you're like, man, we're barely even halfway done with the season. Not that we wanted it to end at all. You're like, man, how am I going to stay tip-top shape? And you catch a second wind, and you don't even think about the rest of the year. But that mid-season fatigue's definitely a thing. I'm not making excuses for a rough week we had, but that's a real thing, and could be a factor in our offense taking a little bit of dip from our flaming hot start that we took.
Yeah.
But moving on from Pitt, forget about that one, wipe it away. Game against Bucknell was canceled, and then we headed to Ann Arbor to play Michigan Wolverines, another team that I love to beat. Historic program in the Big Ten. They're always.
Dude, I think our junior year there was like 11 guys drafted out of there.
Yeah,
ultimately they're a good program. You know, ultimately they were in the College World Series.
Yeah, well, I made it to the championship series. I can't remember exactly what year. That was under Coach Backich, who's now at Clemson. But I know who their new staff is, and they do a good job too. So, you know, tough to go on the road and win. I don't know quite what the weather was like, but sometimes it can be pretty rough up there in Michigan. But we came out and got off to a great start in the series, winning 12-5.
Yeah, dude, and Ryan DeSanto, you know, he did exactly what we needed him to do on Friday night. You know, he came out, he gave up a 2-spot early, but then he retired. I think he retired 7 straight from the 3rd to the 5th inning, and ultimately he gave up a few more runs there in the 6th, but he went 5.2. He gave up 5 runs on 6 hits, and you know, ultimately he left the game with us winning. You know, where our offense absolutely exploded in the 6th inning. You know, we homered 3 times in the game. Bryce Molinaro homered, Kling homered, and Weingartner. Or no, Bryce, Wagner, and Weingartner homered. And, you know, ultimately Ryan DeSantos did everything we needed to get us to the bullpen to shut them down in the 7th, 8th, and 9th.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, offense exploded. 6 runs in the 6th, 12 runs on 12 hits. By the way, we're 14-1 when we score 10+ runs. That's not really a surprising stat, but the impressive part is we've done it 15 times this year. We've scored 10+ runs. I think that the difference maker for this team moving forward is these conference games. Are we going to win the games where we score less than 10? We have to nut up on the mound a little bit and get some timely hits to win some of these closer games. Certainly capable. And the rest of the weekend, we did not. We weren't necessarily cold at the plate. Scored 7 runs, scored 5 runs today on Sunday. Just unfortunately gave up 1 more run than we scored. So Saturday, after a big offensive day, we lose 7-8, 8-7, and Cole Wagner had another really good game. He's getting hot here. He's been having a really good year. There are some other guys that have kind of taken the spotlight early on the season, but he seems to really be heating up. His name's popping up more and more. my Twitter feed and in the box scores. He's jumping out. So Saturday went 2 for 3, hit a bases clearing double late in the game, 3 RBIs. So, but are you looking at the box score there for that game, Sal?
Yeah, I'm checking it out right now. And dude, like, realistically, we win Friday, we lose Saturday. So like, we're 1-1 going into Game 3. You know, and we won our first 2 series in the Big Ten. We dropped last week to Michigan State, where ultimately now against Michigan, you know, 1-1 in the series. You know, if we get that Sunday win, you know, that the flight home's a lot easier.
Yeah.
You know, you're a lot more confident. You know, you're looking at it and you're like, oh shit. You know, we won 3 conference series already and only dropped 1. But, you know, unfortunately we dropped that Sunday game, and, you know, now we're 500 in the Big Ten, where, you know, just like I said, like the best team in the big leagues wins 60% of their games. The worst team wins 40. We're like, we'd be at 60%, but instead, you know, we're 500 right now, and, you know, we got a lot of games. We got a lot of season left to go.
Yeah, and in that Saturday game, they scored all 8 of their runs in the first 4 innings. Just had a rough start on the mound. It happens. What I do like is we kept battling. Like, they scored 3 in the 3rd. We put up a 0. They scored 4 in the 4th inning to go up 8-2, and then we come back out in the 5th inning and put up a 4 spot.
And that's what I'm saying, dude. Look at that game. Like, we put up 6 zeros.
Yeah.
You know, where like you look at a big league reliever, like the guys who are the elite of the elite, you know, ultimately they only give up runs 1 out of 10 times. Right. You know, the guy's a 2 ERA guy, he's going to give up runs 8 out of 10 times, where, you know, our guys, you know, they need to get a little bit more consistent on the mound with executing. And, you know, there are a lot of bright spots where, you know, we do put up a lot of zeros, and we do, you know, we are punching out a good amount of guys right now too. But as they go forward, we need to eliminate those big momentum innings. You know?
Yeah, and our pitching staff's been beat up a little bit. Like, we had some very minor setbacks in our staff that put some guys on the shelf for a week or 2, and some are starting to come back, and so they haven't really been able to settle into those roles. You know, the weekend rotation's been moving around. Some, you know, this guy's starting Friday night. Next week he's starting Saturday, and there's a lot to be said for just consistency and you know, kind of falling into your role in the pitching staff, where you can just get comfortable, and we haven't had that yet, and we're going to. So I predict that we see some of these kind of outlier numbers start to go away as guys kind of settle into their role in the staff. That's something that's easily overlooked, but it matters. And all it takes is just a few weeks in a row of some consistency there, in terms of guys being able to toe the rubber and stay healthy.
Yeah, no, dude, and like, even just looking back on our time, like at the resources that Penn State, you know, ultimately gives you as an athlete when it comes to, you know, your scheduling, your nutrition, you know, all the little things kind of outside of the baseball field, where, like, you know, I'm not necessarily worried about the wins and the losses right now, because, like, what I'm kind of seeing is, like, okay, this is the first time we were bombarded with games where, right, you know, in the last 2 to 3 weeks, we've had a higher volume of games, and, you know, fatigue mass fitness a little bit, you know, especially, you know, neurological, where they've been traveling a lot. They've been, you know, on planes, buses, you know, they've had their mix of home games and stuff like that, you know, but we, you know, we were on the road at Michigan this week. You know, we traveled out to Pitt. So we kind of been getting around a little bit, and ultimately it's that part of the season where, you know, guys need to just stay on top of their bodies, stay on top of their development, you know, keep resting, keep recovering, and just keep getting better.
Yeah. That's a good point you make. Like, they had a big week of games and will for the next couple weeks, where, being in the northern part of the country, you're not playing midweeks, the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season. You're traveling to play your weekend series, so you have that week in between to prepare for each series, and then all of a sudden you got Tuesday, Wednesday night games in the middle of those, out of nowhere, where the southern teams are from opening day are playing midweek series. They can play one game in midweek and then weekend, and every once in a while they'll sprinkle in a Tuesday and a Wednesday night game. They just got thrown in. Now, we had Bucknell canceled, but that's a good point. And those bus rides out to Pitt and back on a Tuesday night can be pretty rough. Playing a night game and then 3-hour bus ride
back, go to class,
8 a.m.
wake up
class
again
the next morning. I'll never forget.
Yeah, no, but dude, that's the adversity they got to dive into.
Yeah, that is,
they got to dive into that. They got to get hungry because of it, ultimately, and they got to get that chip on their shoulder and get that confidence going and start winning games again.
Yeah, and just to touch on Sunday, we dropped it 6-5, and gave up 5 runs in the third. So another big inning. Kind of a little bit of a tendency there, but I think that's something that I know that's something that the staff is going to be addressing, and whether they decide to make moves a little quicker when those innings get tough, or they just put an emphasis on it as they're preparing their pitching staff. I think that's something that they can clean up, and that's a lot to do with what's going on between the ears, and it takes one guy to step up and just, we might have an inning off to a rough start, walk 2 guys, we make a pitching move, guy comes in with a little energy, little fire, punches out the next 3 guys, and boom, confidence is back, we're rolling, guys are fired up. Like, sometimes that's all it takes, and just got to get kicked in the teeth a few times before you learn it every now and again.
Yeah, no, and dude, in game 2 of the Michigan series, like Anthony Steele, he came in, after having a tough game over there at Pitt, and, he had 3 shutout innings, 5 Ks. Chase Renner, he's another bright spot on the mound. He's been getting out there more and more. His stuff, he runs it up there pretty good. Where he was pretty electric in, ultimately one of the games. He had a perfect 9th, in that game that Cole Wagner had 3 hits. So he's a bright spot, and I'm happy to see that he's kind of on the come up here. He's getting more appearances and innings late, but it's starting to look pretty good, and then, looking at their stats right now, like Ryan DeSantos, he got a 4.02 ERA, 5-1 wins and losses. He got the most innings on our team with 31.1, 20 hits only, 13 walks, 37 punch outs. Like, he's a very, competitive Friday night arm that we got going right now. Mm-hmm. And, he's ultimately one of those guys who are about to get stretched out more and more and kind of really, get into this season a little bit more, where, I think he's coming on to, full go.
Yep, absolutely. And I wouldn't call, our issues here necessarily a pattern yet. It's just, I would consider it more of a fluke thing, and I think these guys will get it corrected. But so to recap that, we're 3-6 in our last 9. We asked for some adversity in the last pod we did, and we got it. And exciting part is now we get to see how they respond. So quick statistic rundown through 27 games of the season. Paxton Kling leading our team in hitting at 351. Bryce Molinaro is leading the team in RBIs, 34. Kling, 10 home runs. And Jakonski, I always forget there's 2 of them. I don't know which Jakonski, but I think it's Jesse. One of the Jakonski brothers has 9 doubles, leading the team in doubles. So, but there's a lot of guys that are just pounding the ball, so they're going to keep doing that. But what we got ahead is
Joe
Bucknell.
Jakonski got the 9 doubles.
Sorry, Joe. I gave the credit to your brother, but thank you for correcting me, Sal.
But I'll tell you what, Jesse Jakonski got 7 pumps.
There we go.
I'll tell you what, them brothers are swinging it.
I know. I'd love to hear some stories of those rivalries. We'll have to get them on.
Yeah, both of them. They're slugging 467 and 544. Paxton Kling, dude, is slugging 672.
Is that good?
Pretty damn good.
All right, what we got ahead? We got Bucknell midweek. Let's absolutely smoke them, please. And then we're heading out to Minnesota. We're going to Minneapolis. It's probably going to be about 18 degrees. Wind's blowing in from left field.
I'll tell you what, though, they hooked us up pretty good when we went out there.
They did, except
that was one of my favorite trips.
Yeah, I lost these 2 teeth in that series, though.
It looks like they're back in.
They're back in. They fell out again, though. So I have bad memories there. But, yeah, nice accommodations. But Minnesota right now, they're 2-7 in the Big Ten. Don't be deceived, though. They're a really good team. They lost the series to Purdue, which Purdue, by the way, is pretty legit.
Really good.
They're really good. They lost the series to Oregon, which, by the way, Oregon's pretty legit.
They were a super regional team last year.
Yeah, exactly. And then they got swept by Iowa, which, by the way, Iowa, pretty legit. So
Pretty sure they have a 100-mile-an-hour arm over there in Iowa.
They do. And they won a series against Arizona State earlier in the year. So Minnesota being 2-7 is not indicative of them being a bad team. They played 3 of the best teams in the Big Ten thus far.
They're gritty.
Right. They always have been.
They're also a team, like, in my opinion, who is just notorious for making things happen. You know, ultimately, sometimes, like, we played some SEC schools, some Big 12 schools and stuff like that early in the year, you know, and you get the guys with the hype, the talent, and, you know, they're a little bit uphill where, you know, some ride fastballs above it, you know, you get by them, but then you get the teams like kind of like Minnesota, you know, Nebraska a little bit, where they're a little bit more gritty, you know, they're a little bit, they're trying to, you know, singles, they're trying to spray the ball around this field, they're going to run a little bit, they're going to do, you know, a lot of the little things, and they're going to ultimately try and put some pressure on us. So I think this is a good series this is a good get-back series.
This is a great get-back series. So I'm really looking forward to watching this one. But, yeah, Minnesota's a really good team, so another good test for us. And we just got to come out and do our job. I'll have to look at the weather and see what because that's always a factor up there. Although, are they playing in the Vikings Stadium or something now?
I don't
I see a bunch of highlights there.
Minneapolis, Minnesota, Seibert Field.
Is that the indoor football stadium?
I don't care what field it is, as long as we win.
Yeah, you didn't have to turn double plays from second base in 15 degrees.
60 feet 6 inches is 60 feet 6 inches anywhere. I don't care if it's your local Legion. I don't care if it's college. I don't care if it's the big league. 60 feet 6 inches.
I'm just pleading the case for me as a position player where we walked 4 guys in a row. I haven't left my spot at second base, and the wind's blown 25 and the wind chill.
As a position player, are you a fan of the turf or the dirt more?
I'm traditional. I'm dirt all the way, but turf does make sense for certain climates, like up north. But 100% dirt. You can't be getting your jersey all dirty.
Yeah, I'm in on the dirt too.
Yeah.
I can't stand the turf.
Yeah, 100%. All right, Bucknell, Minnesota, West Virginia. That sounds like 4 or 5 wins.
Yeah, dude, lead it off with some confidence against Bucknell. I hope we go at them. Ultimately, that's our only midweek game this week. I'm sure we're gonna throw, some guys that we're prepping for the weekend in that game. So I want to see our barrels get hot there, and then ultimately take that out to Minnesota into that season, and get a series, a Big Ten series win. And I'd consider this a big win.
Absolutely.
A big weekend series win.
Absolutely. All right, Sal, anything else?
No, I'm pretty excited though. Looking past that, dude, we got West Virginia at West Virginia, and then we white out against USC.
Oh, that'll be sick. I might have to
Dude,
fly.
Penn State USC baseball game. That's gonna be badass.
I might have to fly out there for that.
Dude, that's cool.
We'll do an in-person podcast. Let's do it.
At USC.
No, this is in State College.
Yeah, it is. It's in State College. Maybe we should. Post-game fireworks, post-game autographs, trading cards, giveaways.
We get autographs from the players.
I want your autograph.
I'll sign your forehead.
Good.
All right, man. Catch you next
All
time.
right. Well, next time we catch up, let's hope we turn this thing around.
Absolutely.
We learned a little bit and we got better.
See you, man.
I'll see you.